Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi, Arise News International correspondent.
Good morning, at your service. Good morning, Dr. Rubin. Good morning, Ayon.
I'm surprised to see you in Lagos.
Yes.
Yeah.
We are ready for anything, because anything happens news-wise. Good to see you all, All righty, good morning to you viewers. Let me tell you what's happening around the world. Well, let's start here in Nigeria, where sovereign bonds did fall following US President Donald Trump's threat of military action here in Nigeria. Now, longer-dated bonds fell the most, with the 2051 issue falling roughly 0.5 cents before retracing some of the losses to bid at just under 92 cents on the dollar. Now, in contrast with flat trading for most emerging market bonds. That being said, investors were largely unfazed by that threat. But one country that is apparently still concerned is Chad, which ordered the immediate closure of its border with Nigeria, citing security concerns following this US threat to invade Nigeria. Now, the Chadian president, Mohamed Idris Deby, is believed to have made the move after alleged intelligence suggested that terrorist elements from northern Nigeria were preparing to flee into Chadian territory. Now, military sources in N'Djamena were said to have confirmed that the Chadian army has been placed on full alert, with troops and armored vehicles deployed across key border corridors linking the two countries. Well, staying in Africa, and Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan has been sworn in after winning 98% of the votes in a ballot the main opposition party in the East African country has called a sham election, which prompted deadly protests nationwide. Now, Hassan took the oath of office during a ceremony on Monday at a military base in the capital, Dodoma. Now, the event was closed to the public following the violence that accompanied this vote, in which two main opposition challengers were barred from running. Now, Presidents Hassan Sheikh Mohammed of Somalia, Hakainde Hichilema of Zambia, and Felipe Mfuli of Mozambique were all in attendance at this inauguration. Now, over in the capital, the commercial capital of Tanzania, that's Dar es Salaam, tensions remain high following 3 days of election protests. Shops are still shuttered along nearly empty streets, with most people remaining at home. There's been a total internet blackout, which has been in place since the protests broke out on Election Day, which was October 29th. Now, moving on to the Middle East now. And police in Israel, they have arrested the military's top lawyer after she admitted to leaking footage of a Palestinian detainee being tortured by Israeli forces. This is Yilfat. I wonder if maybe one day somebody will follow my own directions, because I don't know what these pictures are. But we were supposed to see a picture of Yilfat Toma Yarushami, who unfortunately resigned earlier this week as military advocate general of the Israeli Defense Forces. In her letter, she took full responsibility for the leak of this footage, which was broadcast back in August of 2024, which shows reserve soldiers at the Sede Timan military base in southern Israel taking aside a detainee, surrounding him with riot shields in order to block visibility while he was allegedly beaten and stabbed in the rectum with sharp objects. Now, the detainee was treated for severe injuries. 5 reservists were charged with aggravated abuse and causing serious bodily harm to the detainee. There have been denials, of course, of the charges, and none of these officers have been named. The detainee himself was actually part of the prisoner releases back to Gaza in October. Now, back to Toma Yarushami, the lady, the former lawyer for the IDF. Her resignation letter, in it, she said that she approved the leaking of that video to counter this right-wing narrative that allegations of severe abuse of detainees were being fabricated. She said that it was her duty and the duty of her office to investigate reasonable suspicions of acts of violence against any detainees. So those are your well-briefed stories. Before we come to you for comment, let's take a look at our newspapers today. As ever, we begin with the front page of This Day. This Day's headline goes on to talk about, of course, Trump saying that the United States may deploy airstrikes now and ground troops in Nigeria, while reporting that updates following the US President Donald Trump's threat to military action over the alleged killings of Christians in Nigeria have, of course, prompted swift diplomatic engagement from Abuja service chiefs and the NSA, which says that Nigeria welcomes support to combat insurgency, but not under foreign pressure. Now, another headline on the front page of This Day features the INEC chairman, Professor Joash Amukutan, who says that the Anambra governorship election will be his first major test, assuring Nigerians of a credible exercise and warning that any attempt to disrupt the poll will be met with firm resistance. And then in the picture headline of This Day, we can see that it does show the Arewa Consultative Forum paying a courtesy visit here at the Arise News offices here in Lagos. The delegation was led by Bashir Dalhatu and as well as Mike Maman Osman, and they were received by our chairman, Prince Nduka Baigbena, the chairman and editor-in-chief of course, This Day Media Group and the Arise News channels. Let's move on to This Day's weekly legal insert, which is The Advocate by Onikepo Braithwaite. Now, she leads this week. Her column is entitled Extricating Nigeria from CPC Designation. Now, in it, she criticizes the US decision to label Nigeria a country of particular concern over religious freedom, describing it as unfair and politically motivated. Braithwaite says that Nigeria's insecurity is more complex than religion. It is also driven by poverty, by banditry, and general criminality. She urges that the federal government is to enforce constitutional provisions and the use of Sharia criminal law in 12 northern states and prosecute those behind any religious killings. She also calls for greater diplomatic engagement and immediate appointment of an ambassador in Washington in order to help reshape global perception. Which brings us to the front page of the New Telegraph, which leads with news of Chad closing its border to Nigeria, which we discussed during the World Brief. Let's move on to our next newspaper today, and that will bring us up with the front page of The Punch. Now, The Punch does lead with Tinubu moving to appoint new ambassadors amid this US tension. So again, it does seem as though there's going to be a lot more diplomatic movement off the back of this threat coming from the United States. The paper does say that the President Tinubu, is finalizing the appointment of ambassadors after months of delay. Well, let's move on to our next paper this morning. We can see that actually, let's stay with The Punch, because The Punch does go on to discuss this issue happening within the PDP. Its actual headline says that governors are battling Wike as PDP factions jostle for control. Now, the crisis in the PDP deepened on Monday as loyalists of FCT Minister Nyesom Wike took over the party's national secretariat in Abuja. Now, the Wike-backed faction declared Abdulrahman Mohammed as acting national chairman, displacing Umar Damagun's leadership. Now, the takeover did spark clashes and police intervention, while PDP governors vowed to reclaim control of the party ahead of its national convention. Now, to the Daily Sun, which leads with this headline of how Buhari's refusal of help the US is raising eyebrows. Now, the paper reports that former President Muhammadu Buhari's rejection of US assistance in tackling insecurity made Washington doubt Nigeria's commitment to ending violence. Now, this is a perception that eventually, according to this write-up, led to the designation of Nigeria as a CPC, a country of particular concern. I mean, it is quite an interesting article. It goes on to say that US had, offered intelligence and military support, but the Buhari administration had turned it down, creating the impression, according to this article, that Nigeria was not serious about fighting terrorism. I'm sure many people would be opposed to that narrative. Well, moving on to the Daily Independent today. Its front page says, at the top left-hand corner of the paper, it does show that Daily Independent is reporting a different type of story. Now, experts are blaming toxic food preservation in Nigeria on poor storage and weak enforcement. Now, the paper says that food experts have linked the rising use of dangerous chemicals like formalin and sniper to poor cold storage infrastructure and weak regulation. They're actually warning that many traders facing high fuel costs and, of course, erratic power supply resort to toxic shortcuts to preserve meat and fish. And stakeholders are, of course, calling for stronger enforcement and greater investment in cold storage facilities. Well, let's move on to our papers from the United Kingdom. Now, both the Metro and the Mirror today are what we're looking at. And we do have the Metro focusing on this train stabbing. Now, the Metro's headline reads that 3 missed chances to stop train knifeman. That is as the suspect appeared in court yesterday. Police have been accused of failing to act despite earlier warnings about the attacker who allegedly had stabbed several people on a train in eastern England. Similarly, the Daily Mail carries this report highlighting public outrage over the missed opportunities to prevent the attack.
All right. Thank you so much, Adefemi. Just before we get into the stories, we have breaking news, actually. Arise News channel can confirm that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu will announce imminently new ambassadors for critical strategic nations as a multi-strategic approach to stem the Trump threat, and he's directed the service chiefs or security services to conclude vetting immediately. New ambassadors may be appointed as early as next week. Again, breaking news, the President, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, will announce imminently new ambassadors, and this might be as early as next week. And security services have been directed to conclude vetting immediately. So this is an update, of course, on the response by the government to designating Nigeria as a country of particular concern and taking action to ensure that they're able to stem terrorism across Nigeria. And also, of course, further diplomatic conversations and diplomatic dialogue with America. I think this is definitely big. And it ties in with what Onikepo Braithwaite wrote. He just talked about her saying appointing ambassadors to help shape global perception. And this is what has been called on this table. Dr. Bati has made some recommendations, even immediately bringing to bear for advice, consultations, some of Nigeria's diplomats, accomplished diplomats who have an experience in this era and can effectively guide the president on how to respond to the United States of America, and of course to continue that cordial relationship that Nigeria has enjoyed hitherto with the United States.
Absolutely. Anyway, we praise President Tinubu because if I talk now, they will say this.
Nobody is stopping you from talking.
The truth is we praise President Tinubu for finally doing this, because we've been talking about this for how many years now? 2 years. When will you put in ambassadors? In fact, we spoke about it when this talk started. That if you have ambassadors there, they'll be able to do high-level country-to-country meeting rather than say you want to send some people. Because as of last week, the posture, you can correct me if I'm wrong, was that they wanted to send some people to go and interface with Congress in America. And we kept on saying, there's a need for ambassadors.
Even the Senate had said they were going to Congress.
Thank God you said it with your mouth. That's a fact you said with your mouth. That is the Senate that said they want to go and interface with them. But we're happy. At least we'll have ambassadors that we're able to talk to them one-on-one. I don't want to say that these are the results of the Trump threats, but it is what it is. At least President Tinubu now has said we'll put ambassadors in. So what should be the charge from these ambassadors? Interface. Tell your own part of the story. And also, apart from ambassadors, we must also show that we are ready right here. See, Femi, the reason why we are having all these problems is that we've seen some people support all sorts of things. There's a former government spokesperson that once tweeted in this country that he had no qualms with blasphemy laws. A former government spokesperson. The tweet is out there. Not this government, too. A former government spokesperson.
Name that person, though, so that people don't think I'm the one.
Yeah, his tweet is out there, but sure
I'm not the one.
It's not you, Dr. Abati. You can't say such a thing now. We know.
No, his post is out there,
you
so his name is out there.
The tweet is out there.
For,
we don't need to. We are seeing all of these things is happening. You know me, I will tell you the undiluted truth. Some people will not like it. Me, I don't care. It's the truth that will make us free in this country. So these are part of the things Onikepo Braithwaite is talking about. So we now need to, apart from ambassador, we need to fix things internally. Arewa Konzo made a very important point yesterday about having that, judicial panel. Let people come, let's talk.
Yes,
sort of like the Oputa panel we had back in the days. Let's talk. As for that Israeli woman that they are trying to, God bless that woman for bringing out the videos of how they were torturing a Palestinian. God bless her. No matter the persecution she faced from the right-wing Israeli government, she's a hero forever because the truth will come out. Do you know that since the ceasefire happened, Femi, over 230 people have been killed?
Absolutely. Palestinians
in the name of a ceasefire happening. And that's the sad reality of the society we live in. So we need to call a spade a spade. And Madam Saluhu, Mama Saluhu, has sworn herself in after shambolic election. She got how many percent?
98%.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of, because you see, we forget that the joke some people call democracy. We forget in a hurry that Saddam Hussein too used to have a political party called the Ba'ath Party.
Yes.
When they had elections with the Ba'ath Party, they used to get over 90-something%. But we can see how it ended. And Africa is not free. Do you know that Don Babaye, the military leader of Guinea, has now said he wants to throw his axe into the elections and run for democratic elections? You can see the joke Africa has become. Democracy is suffering. Our leaders should speak up.
When will Africa speak up? I said on this table that other leaders on the African continent are enablers. Because if you see an obvious sham election and you congratulate and celebrate elections like that of the president, you're part of the problem. If we can condemn coups in West Africa, as ECOWAS did, and even threatened boots on the ground if they didn't, go back to democratic government, we should also be able to criticize and condemn democratic coups, such as elections that are marred by violence, as we've seen in Tanzania, elections that we saw in Cameroon with Paul Biya. If this is the way to go, then we are not yet ready for democracy on the African continent. And I keep on insisting, we cannot continue to allow the West to interfere in our affairs. Africa must be Africa's solution to Africa's problems when the leaders wake up, arise, and are ready to defend democracy by speaking against sham elections like this. Very notably, President of Kenya, Ruto, congratulated on his X account, very publicly, President Suluhu. So what are we talking about? Until we're ready, we'll continue to see elections like this. And so talking about that, let me come back home to our own election.
Yes.
Professor Amupiton says you can judge him begin to judge him based on his conduct of the Anambra elections. And sir, we will definitely be judging
Absolutely.
you. We will review the modus operandi. We will see if the challenges that INEC has faced or had faced in previous times would materialize in this election that at least is with a smaller population as opposed to the entire country. Time of election materials are arriving. The transference of election results electronically. Would it be transmitted electronically during these elections? Violence. Would we see ballot snatching? Would we see campaigns up until the point of elections? These are some of the areas that Nigerians will be judging to see whether or not it is time to impose or repose our trust in the person of the INEC chairman. We're wishing him all the best. We want him to succeed because his success is the success of democracy in Nigeria.
Okay, one of the paragraphs in my column back page of this morning, is devoted to this issue of the appointment of ambassadors. We will recall that the Nigerian government dealt with this, it will appear, months ago, when the Senate looked at the list. The Senate was said to have made its recommendations. The list went back to the president. Nobody has had anything. It's been up to almost 2 years that ambassadors were recalled, and then there's been no action. Now, this is a particular case whereby, the president or the presidency is having a knee-jerk reaction. It's not about the national security meeting. Those meetings are held procedurally to address challenges. But in this particular case, it has taken Trump's allegation to wake up the government. Many of the original names were told on that list. Some of them have died.
Yes.
Some are no longer qualified.
Correct.
The professional persons many of them have even retired.
Yes.
Because of the tardiness of government. Now, the ambassadors are representatives of the government, of the president, directly, under international law and diplomacy. Now, to have left those posts empty, I don't think it's a good thing. But now, okay, knee-jerk reaction, but there will be a lot of cleanup that will have to be done. It's not just to say national security agencies should vet the list. They have to look at that list again and not appoint dead people as ambassadors. They have to be very sure. 2, it should not be job for the boys. Because there is a professional cadre. There is a non-professional cadre. You know, and if you have a list of politicians without experience, now Nigeria needs very experienced people.
Absolutely.
And, you know, the thinking should be done in terms of the rating of these agencies. The United States, China, the Court of St. James, being left without a substantive ambassador or high commissioner for a very long time, I think is a major oversight that is inexcusable. Now, our neighboring countries, you may think if they post you to Togo, you may think it's not an important assignment. It is. All these neighboring countries, Togo, Niger, Chad, Cameroon, you know, they are very strategic positions. And then the EU, you know, but in any case. So it's important that professionalism is recognized. Many of these embassies have been under the control of councillors and charge d'affaires who have limited authority. Now there is also the issue of funding. At a point we said we were going to rationalize our foreign missions. Now, because those missions are not properly funded, they are not properly maintained. But in other words, I'm just saying, better late than never. But there should be professionalism, including even the security attachés, the defense attachés that they are called, that will be sent there. This wake-up call that I've written about, you know, we see in diplomacy now that some people have said, look, if we have a functioning, you know, fully staffed embassy in Washington, maybe perhaps, you know, the diplomat who is there, you know, who is leading the team, will have been able to at least do some damage control before we got to this level. So this is the issue. But as for Samia Suluhu Hassan, you know, another story about Africa. When she became president in 2021, women around these tables jubilated. Now we will see how a woman will provide womanhood, motherhood, leadership. We have seen that in Africa, there's no difference between women and men. It's about power and opportunity. And Samia Suluhu Hassan, from being a wave of fresh air after President John Magufuli, she has even proven to be worse than Magufuli. This election has been described as a sham election by international observers, particularly the SADC Secretariat, of which Tanzania is a member, also by Amnesty International, which has reported that strong political parties were not allowed to take part. They were banned, like the Chadema party. Tundu Lissu, you know, was the major opposition leader, was accused of treason. Maybe he will now be released now that President Hassan has had her away. In fact, the problem she will have now is a question of legitimacy. The swearing-in could not be done at the stadium, which has been the tradition. They had to go to military barracks. So how is he going to lead the same people that she's running away from? The people were not allowed to attend the ceremony. They did it in a military barracks. And now shops are closed down. You know, inflation has gone up. And yet, she wants to rule. And her party, the CCM, has been ruling Tanzania since independence. So again, what you have here is sectarism, both at the level of the political party and also at the level of this woman. You always say women have empathy. I don't understand.
The better leaders.
Well, that's what you say.
One out of many.
As for Chad, Mahamat Idris Deby Itno says it's a precautionary caution. They don't want Nigerian terrorists to come to their country. So he says it's precautionary. I hope the time will not come when Cameroon will close its border against us, Niger will close its border against us, and then we will be isolated. That is a major threat that we face. And the CCPE, the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, is correct, in my view, by saying that this is going to affect Nigeria's investment drive. What happened in emerging markets yesterday, I have argued, may well be a blip, as Tilewa Adebayo of CFG Advisory has argued.
He did release
but that remains to be seen.
today.
All right, Dr. Basi, thank you so much. Adefemi,
you are most welcome.
Great, always good to see you, and hopefully maybe see you across tomorrow.
We never know.
All right.
We never know.